Ready?
Ready to go.
Hey, baby, I don't think I'm going to need you anymore. Anyway, that's a really good opening. Welcome back to the Journey NYC podcast. I'm Anthony.
And I'm Jesse. What's up, guys?
And we are here today in episode number 6.
That's right.
Super excited. We are here in New York where it has gotten very, very cold. So, of course, I thought I'd warm up everyone's ear pods and, talk a little bit about the new guest that we actually have.
Yes. Corina. Welcome.
Hi.
Yay.
Well, thank you.
Corina.
What's up?
I've been a huge fan of yours since the 80s. I'm not that old, but, as the thing is that I went back and dug up stuff.
My God. Watch your mouth. Late 80s, just to clarify.
Late 80s. Okay, anyway.
Very late 80s.
Very, very late 80s, yeah.
Yeah. I am so in awe just sitting here in your presence.
Aw. Thank you, you crazy pants.
Anyway, we've been friends forever.
That's right. I'm like, what are you
I've
talking
seen
about?
all kinds of different shows of yours that you've put out, and we wanted to welcome you to the journey. I've known you for a while, so I've been privy to hearing and watching you go through many different paths.
Metamorphoses,
yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you've come out of the chrysalis, and you're a beautiful butterfly.
Oh, thank you.
Why don't we start with, is where you are today?
Where am I? Well, I am on a journey of following my bliss. And, I listen to people like Abraham Hicks, and I used to be a huge fan of Anthony Robbins, and I listen to Sadhguru, and I could just go on and on. I don't know, inhaled speakers of that sort, motivational speakers. And I've had to find my way. A lot of stuff worked for me and some didn't. And basically I'm in a space now where I follow my happy. When something doesn't feel good, someone doesn't feel good, that includes family members too, I don't mess with it. And I'm very, takes a lot of courage to be honest. I don't volunteer my honesty, but when people ask questions, then
Be ready for the
She
answer.
doesn't volunteer her honesty, but if you read the eyebrow, you'll know.
Meaning I don't go around just throwing up on people. My bleh, this is what I feel. But when someone insists on inserting themselves in your life, and you find that you just don't feel good when you're around them, and that they're taking more than they're giving, it's a give and take. Mm-hmm. And I had a pattern of attracting people that just took and took and took, and never gave anything back. And so now I don't do that anymore. And it has been quite a journey, and I'm in a really great place in my life.
I think that's what's interesting is when we hear about people who were able to gain a certain amount of success in their chosen field, whether it be music or in, acting or whatever it is, in the arts in general, is people tend to look at them and say, wow, look at all of this. They were all of this and that, and but where are they today? And for me, as I remember, looking at that and saying, you know what, this is probably the most down to earth person.
Oh.
When we first met, I remember you were so powerful and so determined to take care of yourself. I don't need anything. Then I dragged you to the nail salon.
Yeah.
And then
Apparently I needed a manicure. Yeah.
Yeah, but then we got to be fast friends. So
that's right.
So I mean, it's really interesting to hear how you came from what the world, I think, would perceive as success, and yet it sounds like you're so much happier today.
Yeah.
And I think that's the interesting thing about your story and your journey that Jesse and I wanted to hear about.
Right.
So let's say that was then.
Mm-hmm.
The late 80s. There was
right.
There was global success. And then, tell us what started happening, because for you, I don't think it was just one moment. There were a series of things that probably happened to lead you down this different road.
Right. Well, I was a child raised in the South Bronx, which could be known as the burning times, where I lived in a building surrounded by possibly 10 other buildings that were destroyed and abandoned and burnt down for insurance money. It was a thing to do then.
Wow.
Yeah. So slumlords would burn down these buildings, sometimes with families in them.
What?
And yeah. And as it were, we were a forgotten people that nobody really cared about. And when I say we, I'm talking about people of color, Black and Hispanic, predominantly Puerto Rican, living in these areas that nobody cared about. And there was no plan to fix these buildings anytime soon. And it was very normal for the children to jump out of windows onto mattresses that people threw out into areas where they dumped their garbage. And that's how they played. We didn't have playgrounds, and that was normal. I had family members that did much better, and they lived in better neighborhoods, and so Christmases were always really fun, and Thanksgiving, and we could go to their houses, and my cousins always had so much more than I did, but it wasn't a big deal. Like, that's just what it was. It was, I went back home. It was my neighborhood. They didn't visit because apparently I lived in very dangerous areas. It wasn't dangerous to me, but it was to them and whatever. So my mom had mental illness, and I didn't know that. What I did know is that my mom was really mean, super volatile. I would categorize her as dangerous, super bipolar. One minute she could be laughing with me, and the next moment she was beating me to blackout. Wow. And it was at a time where children weren't taken from their parents. So she would send me to school with turtlenecks to hide the bruises on my ribs. And, she hit me with belts that were these plastic belts that would leave welts that sometimes bled on my body. And no one ever checked for those things. And I protected her to the very end because that's what you did. My dad was a very sweet, sweet spirit, who I thought, he really doesn't see any of this. Turns out he couldn't deal. So he drank, and mostly on the weekends. Eventually it would turn into weekday drinking, but he was very functional in terms of work. Of course, he did hard labor work because that's the work they could get. My mom was a super strong woman. In spite of all her issues, my mom was going to get water out of a rock when we needed to eat. And she got all kinds of jobs and took all sorts of certifications. And she was a dental assistant, and she was working towards being a nurse. My mom did everything and anything. She was a political activist. So she was both really hated and really, really loved. And because she was so difficult that when she went after people like, say, Hillary Clinton, who would come into our neighborhoods and talk about how she was going to help make things better, back in those days when her husband was the president, my mom would hold her to task. And they got to the point where politicians would be like, give her whatever she wants and get her out. Don't let her talk, because she would create problems. People in those types of communities learned very quickly that if they needed anything done, they needed my mom on their side. So they'd come looking for her, and she just saved kids here and there. She was like their Mother Teresa. She was a horror story at home and to my dad. And she was super unfaithful. And she put herself through incredibly difficult situations in terms of safety. She liked drinking. She liked hanging out. And she had 3 children. So by the time I was 6, I was taking care of my little sister and brother and changing diapers. And that was normal. So my escape was to lock myself up in the room for the hour a day that I wasn't doing chores or taking care of babies. Sometimes I forced them to watch, so I put them in the room with me. One would be tied up inside a little basin. The other one would just be sitting there like, I'm in jail. And I would sing or perform for them, and they just would cry sometimes, and I'd be like, no crying. And I did things I had learned at my home, that when the babies wouldn't fall asleep, if you put a little bit of, oh my God, don't anybody do this, please. If you put a little bit of Vicks Vapor Rub on their eyelids, they were forced to fall asleep because they couldn't keep their eyelids open. So when I was alone with them and I needed time alone, that's what I did, which is so awful. My mom used to do that, so that's what I did. Anyway, and that was my mirror time. And in the mirror was the audience that I would one day perform in front of. So I pretended to be my favorite artist, and I would do my favorite musicals, and I would learn all the songs and perform. And that was where I was happy and safe. So the crazy that went on at home, I don't know. I could balance it out by dreaming and visualizing. And I was a powerful creative as a child. And there were things I understood and knew that my parents, I didn't understand why they didn't know it. And I just thought, this is so simple. They just have to do this. If they stop doing that, things will get better. And I was a quiet, shy child. When my mother discovered that I loved performing, she put me in talent contests and all these kind of things, which then I was a teenager now. Now I was recording for what? I don't know, because there wasn't anyone I knew in the music industry. We were from the South Bronx. What the hell did I know? But when you visualize and when you are as powerfully focused as I was on wanting a better life, you know, Abraham Hicks talks about when you know what you don't want and you dream about what you do want, knowing what you don't want, you make huge deposits into this vortex where you collect a wonderful life. And you just have to believe that you can get, because it already exists. You just have to believe it and then you will live it. And I think I accomplished that. Problem is that much like someone who drinks or does drugs, my drug and my drinking was performing, which of course is healthier in essence, except that I never dealt with my mother's abuse. There was never a place where I could put it. There was never an out for me. I would never tell anyone that my mother was doing these things because I knew she could get in trouble.
So it was your escape.
It was my escape.
You escaped into the mirror.
Yes. So there I was, 18. I'm signing a deal. The first record does okay. I'm kind of like a neighborhood something. Only the neighborhood people knew who I was. Second song was kind of similar. And I went a little bit further. I went to the neighborhoods in Chicago and Florida. And then it went out to the neighborhoods in Los Angeles. So every year I did another song and it added another hood somewhere else. And then Temptation happened. And it was a song I had written 7 years before that. Nobody wanted it.
Really?
Really. And in fact, it almost didn't make it on the album.
It's just one of those things.
It's just one of those things. And my dad looked at me one day and said, I played the album for him. And he was like, that's cool. Where's Temptation? And I said, Dad, the label didn't want it. And he was like, well, that's your hit. So you better get it on there. And he walked away. So I went back to the label and I threw a tantrum. And I decided before walking in, it's going to be on the album. And thank God. Because in 3 months on an independent label, it had gone so far that the majors took notice and said, I had 3 different labels saying we want her. And I was able to choose. And I chose Atlantic. It was a Atco, Atlantic Records. And they greenlit me instantaneously. And from then on, it was very clear, you have to be greenlit in this business. It doesn't matter whether or not you are talented. I mean, which we can prove all the way around. So many, I won't name any names, but there are people who go on to be huge stars where you go, I don't get it. You have to be greenlit. I was greenlit. And I knew that because the type of music I was doing, nobody was doing what I was doing at that time. Nobody was being given the opportunities that I got. I was on an MTV and a VH1 tour. That was huge for someone from the South Bronx. You know, this little sort of ghetto girl. And they were just like, but she can form sentences. I went to Catholic school, which really helped, right? Mm-hmm. And she's such a good girl. We can sell that. And that's what happened. I started doing interviews. Suddenly I was on Atco. I remember when my song hit 40, I was like, I grew up listening to America's Top 40, right? So I'm like, oh my God, I have the 40th song in the country. Like there are millions of songs and I'm 40. And then my phone rang and my label says, be ready. You're going to get a call in 10 minutes. Be next to the phone. And when I pick it up, it's Casey Kasem, who I had grown up listening to, saying, hey, Corina, congratulations on that 40. We're going to talk to you today. I'm like, oh my God. Okay. I don't know what I said. It was stupid. I wasn't prepared. And then it was 27. And then it was 15. And then it was 6. And the only reason it didn't go to number 1 is because the people on top of me were such heavies. It was extreme with More Than Words.
Oh, wow.
It was Bryan Adams with Everything I Do for You. It was Janet Jackson. It was Lenny Kravitz with It Ain't Over Till It's Over. I was just like, hey, I'm cool. I'm 6. The company's banging. I'm top 10.
Yeah.
That was huge.
Yeah.
And so what happens now? I'm like, I did it. I walk into this performance, outdoors, everyone who was anybody at the time, and not any of the artists I had come up with. Those people were in my neighborhood. I was in the presence of people like Mariah Carey. I was in the presence of super insanely huge stars, and they were hanging out in the same area I was hanging out because I was going to be performing Temptation. And I thought, what the fuck is going on here? Can I say that?
Yeah.
Oh my God. So now I'm at Candlestick Park, which my husband tells me is, I don't know, how many thousands? 70,000 people.
Wow.
And as they say, all right, are you ready? And they go, I haven't seen the people. I'm in the back with all the tons and tons and tons of super insanely famous artists. And I'm like, I'm here with them. That means I must be famous too, I'm thinking. And when they go, Corina, you're on. And as they walk me up the stairs and I'm getting past the curtain and they go, Corina. When the audience screamed, I went deaf because it was like white noise. I had never in my life heard anything like that. But when I walked out onto the stage, I was this big because there was so many people. The stage was huge. And then there I was and my dancers, and there was these 3 little things moving around on this enormous stage. We didn't have a band or anything yet. And so I'm like, just keep moving and use the stage. And I look around and I just start, hey, baby, there's something I think you should know. And they just go crazy. And I'm buzzing. I'm like, I'm going to cry. I'm fighting crying because in that moment I realized this is my mirror. I'm that little girl and these are the people that were in that mirror and they're just loving me and screaming. And I walk off the stage and I pass by Salt and Pepper and anyone who was back there. And I'm looking around and they're all like, you're awesome, Corina. And I'm like, that person just said I was awesome. Like, you know, I'm like, oh my God, like Lisa Fisher said I was awesome. And it was just all so surreal. But what I found is that I thought I'm going to be happy one day because I'm going to succeed. And every dream I've ever had is going to come to fruition just because I'm going to make people happy with performing. And so there I was traveling the world and singing and people just, I love you. And I remember going to Japan and being in a room full of people who didn't speak English and they sang my entire album. They learned the words phonetically. And that was so weird. I was just like, I would talk to them and they'd be like, what? And then I'd sing and they were like, if you believe. And I was like, what is going on here? And the bigger that moment got, the worse I felt. Mm-hmm. And one day I was in London and some journalists called my room and said, I'm the one that's going to meet you at the label here and we're going to have a conversation. And just so you know, is there anything that's off topic? And I never do off topic. If you ask me something I don't want to talk about, which is rare, I'll say, I'm not talking about that. And I don't have the, oh my God, I don't do it. I'm just like, whatever. He says, so it's so great to meet you. And he's being really nice to me and it's all really wonderful. And then he asks me this question and it blew my whole world up. He said, so let me ask you something, Corina. What would you do if this didn't work out? And that is the one question I never asked myself because why would I? I came from just what anyone could consider some of the worst situations, and I had accomplished so much. And when he asked me that question, he planted a seed almost of negativity. He started becoming very mean. It led to other questions like, so talk to me about Ebony Diaz. That was the girl who would go on to sue me later. And that's a long, sordid story. It had to do with a producer that she was working with, and then I replaced her. I wrote Temptation, the Temptation I sing. She had another song called Reality that she sung. Reality became Temptation. And it's this long, bottom line is I was the face of this song. Mm-hmm. And when it came time, when it came time to sue, I'm the one she sued because I was the one in the public eye.
What's interesting too is that I remember one of the things that I found so interesting about you for so many years is that you wrote so much of your own music.
Right.
Which back then wasn't a thing.
At all.
At all. Everything was produced.
At all.
And I was like, you wrote that?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people didn't know that. And also I got no credit for that either. The producers would take all the credit. You know, it was at a time, it's a little bit better now. I don't know by how much, but it was a very male dominated, male decision-making situation. And because of how strong my mother was, I had an opinion and I expressed it, and people didn't like that. And still, it didn't get in the way of what I was on my way to do. What got in the way was that the stuff that was in my closet that I had closed off, I had no shame about any of it. I just didn't know I was supposed to deal with it. And so it started just biting me in the ass. And I found myself really sad when I should have been happy. I started making really bad decisions because now I obsessed with the idea of what if I can't do this anymore? What if that guy who asked me a series of questions that were, the nature of asking them was really to just crush my spirit for some reason. The interview got meaner and meaner and meaner. And finally someone from my label said, no more. And he said things like, how could you write a song, sing a song about temptation when you are, little girls are looking up to you, and what are you telling them to just go out and have sex, and you're telling them to just live this life where they do whatever they want to carelessly. And I said, no, I'm saying we all come to having to make decisions. And I'm not trying to be anybody's idol. Like, I'm just singing a goddamn song about stuff that has happened to me, about being with a guy and finding another guy attractive, and about maybe I shop a lot and my temptation is that I won't pay the rent, but I'll go shopping. Maybe it's just about everyone has this experience. That's all it is. And he kept pushing that you need to be more responsible, and you're a young woman, and how could you be so irresponsible that you're telling little girls, and the way that you're dressing, and the blah, blah, blah. And he really got in my head, and that would go on for the next 10 years. And I slowly started to break down my career. And when you are in that space, you attract yourself. You become a magnet, and people are, the world is a mirror, right? So I started to attract all the people that would help me destroy my career, if you can call it that. In reality, it turned out to be an enormous blessing. I wasn't always happy. I came from nothing. I was raised on welfare, food stamps, and government cheese. I knew how to do nothing and do it really well and be happy. And I had more than I ever knew what to do with. And then I had nothing again. The difference now is that I had tasted a better food, and I dressed in better clothes, and I lived in nicer places. I was able to give my family, in some ways, give them things in life that they could never have given themselves. I made more money in a month than my father made in a year. And I was really proud of that, because according to my family, I shouldn't have been able to do that. Not because they didn't think I have the talent, but because that didn't happen for people like us. Specifically, Puerto Rican, third generation, from the hood. And I don't know, God had a plan for me. I had a plan for myself. I really believe that we're little pieces, in life. If God is a really weird word because it brings up weird feelings for people. So source, the light, the universe, whatever you believe in, you have to believe that there's something that you came from that is so wonderful and so great. And that thing that some of us call God or the light is kind of like a giant fire. And then there are a bunch of little candles running around that is a part of that. This little stick, you light the fire, you send it out there. And this thing was so amazing that in order to know just how amazing it was, it had to create a this and a that, a here and a there. And so when these little candles are sent out into the world, that's what we are. So we're still, when people talk about we're one, I really believe that because we are of that thing. And if that little candle, that little fire is a part of the big fire, so it is the fire. So I am the I am, right? And as that, you really can, my message in my work I've discovered is you really can do anything. Because you already are that thing that is the everything. So it sent us all out so that it could show off in many different ways and see the capabilities that it has, right?
It's really interesting listening to you because I think this is the first time, for as many times as we've hung out and talked, this is the first time that I've heard you actually own it and say, I attracted the things that destroyed my own career. I created that.
Yeah. Oh,
which
yes.
For many, many years, and I think we all go through this as human beings, is we're like, well, this happened. Well, that happened.
Right.
I know, and for myself, is I'm like, well, it was a really bad situation, so I just had to step out, and this and that. And I don't always realize for myself when I've self-destructed or when I self-sabotage, which Jesse and I talk about a fair amount. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really interesting to hear you say that for the first time because I've been privy to being able to watch your journey, and that's come now to fruition where now you are creating more things in a different way than what maybe the world would see as mainstream.
Right.
Yeah, it's a powerful story. So many analogy or like parallels to addiction or alcohol come to mind where it wasn't a substance you were abusing, but it was living in a world that you had created for yourself in order to escape the harsh reality, and like so many of these pursuits, like thinking that at the end of this road, the end of this journey is going to be happiness. Like it's going to fix whatever the issues are. And inevitably, I've never heard a story where that holds true. It just eventually catches up to us, and most stories with alcohol or drugs are going to be ending in like a bottom, somebody finally coming to terms with the fact that they can't continue doing what they're doing and it's not working anymore. In your story, it was that you had reached the pinnacle of what you thought was going to be the thing that was going to kind of make everything okay. And of course, it didn't end up being that. And then I'm also picking up on a great story of spirituality and like where you discovered your true self through spirituality and the power that you can draw from that. And I think for me, in my own experience, it was when I started to realize that I wasn't necessarily in control of every aspect of my life that I started to feel more at peace with things, So similar to what you're describing here with like that strength that you found within, that's within all of us. Right. That you aren't in control of everything. There's something else out there. I don't think any of us actually know exactly what that is. Right. But just a sense of some kind of other presence in our lives. You could call it God or a higher power or whatever it is. Right. But that's so important. And I think most of the journeys of people we've spoken with have come to that conclusion at some point. I don't know if it's human nature or what to like seek outside of us for things that are going to complete us or make us whole or fill the void or whatever, however you want to describe that. But the most successful I've seen people come to terms with that and then move on is with some form of spirituality at the end of the road.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really powerful.
I can sit here and tell you stories and name names and stories about terrible things that people have done to me. And I would convince you that I was a victim of these circumstances that we're kind of like a domino effect that life can sometimes be when you're facing challenges. I could do that, and no one would say, well, Corina, you created that. Except that I know differently. I know that our lives, if you could look at your life like a theater play, you cast the characters in it, right? You, based on what you know or what you think you attract us. There's vibration. There's stuff you learn as a child, right or wrong. And there's a way we continue to move through the world with these ideas. And then it's our job to unlearn some of those habits or ideas. And that's not an easy thing to do when you get the ideas from your parents or the elders who you so respect. Also, time changes rules and laws, right? Slavery was the law at one point. You could do that. And now it's like, oh, slavery. But it changed over a course of how many years? It's like life is that way. Things that were acceptable at one point aren't so acceptable anymore. Little boys that are 5 years old can't just kiss a little girl on the cheek anymore without it being sexual harassment, which I think is awful. But that's where we are right now, right? Politically correct, all the different names for different things. So I say this, you're going to have challenges, right? And some of them are going to feel like they're going to fold you. I heard somebody recently say that in an interview. That was such a great way to put it. What you have to know is that the reason why you need them is because it's kind of like, it's not appropriate to say, that is an ugly human being. Except that the reason why we say that is because we have a this and a that, and we're able to be that, like, and this is an attractive human being. Whatever that means to us. You know there's a this because there's a that. There's a here because there's a there. So what does that mean? That means that you need the challenges so that when your life is working out. And when it does, those are the moments where you have to say thank you to whatever that thing is you believe in. And know that the bigger the challenge, the bigger the gift potential, the bigger the blessing potential. And if you tell yourself that, you find that you really, honestly, truly can overcome anything. You can. And you feel out of control often. And it's okay to give in to that. Take a nap. Put on a piece of music that you love. Watch a movie. Interrupt the pattern so it doesn't become a depression that you feel like it's eating you alive, It's about learning how to cope in the moment and then allow yourself to be sad, allow yourself to cry, because that's part of being in this physical form. Remember too that you are a spirit first and a body next. That helps. The idea that some spirits get bodies and others don't have bodies right now, which are the things we call ghosts and we're so afraid of. And, it's all of us come from the same place. All of us have the ability to change the things we don't like in our lives. And we don't know what those things are unless we have seen both sides. And it really helps people feel better when you say, yeah, what you're going through really sucks. So just think of everything works in balance. The deposit you're making that's on the other end of what the positive is for this is so amazing. Now, most people will tell you, well, I never get there. Well, because they accept and believe the fear. False evidence appearing real, which tells them you're shit, your life sucks. And the more you stay in that your shit, your life sucks space, the more you attract more your shit and your life sucks. In the meantime, though, you're still depositing great things into that positive bank. But some of us move on to the next lifetime, if you believe in that, or just pass on before we even get to collect what that is. Give yourself a break, I guess, is what I'm saying, because you're not alone, ever. You're not alone. There are other people with worse stories or more pain or bigger, I don't know, handicap issues, whatever, the things you consider to be, oh my God. Everyone's going through some version of that. And all of us can get to the other side. I'm a testament to that. My mom was a testament to that, and I'm still working it out. Only I'm in a better place. I look at it and I go, wow, this feels really bad. this really sucks. And then I feel sorry for myself and I cry. And then I go, all right, get the fuck over it. This is so waste of time. Put on a pretty dress, some makeup, go outside and go shopping, do something. I don't know, play music, dance. And you change your state. It's about controlling your state. It's the only thing you can control, you know?
I think one of the interesting things that I keep hearing is that there is that balance. There is that yin and that yang. And what I think we are so, in today's society, so afraid of is that uncomfortable nature. We've become so polarized, in my opinion, of what the world is. You're either this or you're that. You're Democrat, you're a Republican, you are black, you're white, you're colored, you're not. There's so many boxes that we as human beings, and we were just talking about something similar to this, about how we quantify our, and how we logically try to understand what's going on in our world, what's going on around us. And sometimes that uncomfortable nature where we sit is exactly where we're going to get the greatest amount of benefit and wealth. When we're able to sit and accept it. Not that you're supposed to, and Brene Brown says this, it's the swamp of your soul that you're not supposed to sit in there, but you're supposed to take note, appreciate the smells, the feels, and everything, and then move through it. And that's always really challenging. I mean, it's challenging for myself. And listening to your, through your journey, it's really interesting to see what the world would perceive from the outside as being at the top of your game and then at the bottom of the ladder. And then my question to you would be, without everything that you've been through, recently, as Jesse and I were able to catch one of your one-woman shows, which was a different incarnation of the same show that I had seen.
Right.
How do you think that would have been different? Because I know that having known you, there are so many times that you pull from your past in order to get this rich tapestry of art that you put out there. If you hadn't had all those struggles, what do you think your life would be like? How would you be different, I guess?
I think that to answer that, I'd have to say the world is full of all kinds of people that accomplish all kinds of things that we can categorize as great, as good, as not so great. I think that had I not had the experiences, I think that my purpose in this life is to say, I'm still here. I got laid out several times and I'm still here. You can still be here too. You couldn't tell me, had you told me 15 years ago, 20 years ago, that I was going to go through this and it was necessary, I probably would have punched you in the face, because it'd be like, nobody deserves to feel this kind of pain. And also I had a big, a good helping of, I'm brown, I'm a woman, racism is real. And I'm not saying it isn't, but I am saying that you have to take control of your own individual self and say, okay, these things exist. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to make a difference. And I'm going to look at it in the face and call it when I see it. And you find that when you do that, it's not the boogie monster under the bed anymore. Because when you look at someone in the face and you go, that's not okay. And you can do that with a sense of self-love and a sense of courage. And you say, hey, that tone and what you're doing to me right now, that's not cool. And I'm calling it out. People tend to run and go, or they'll come back and say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. You're so right. Because you said something before. You said, in reference to dealing with issues, we're so afraid. We're afraid of pain. It's the reason why pharmaceutical companies are multi-billion dollar companies, because we all need antidepressants to deal with just getting up and having coffee in the morning. Just to get up, right? We're afraid. And the thing is that the fear, life is an illusion. You can change your reality. You hear people say it all the time. On a dime, your life can change, but you have to know that. You have to believe that. I couldn't tell the world of people, you have a purpose. that dream that continues to gnaw at you, even though you go, I can't really do that because I have kids I have to feed and I got to pay rent. Oh, and I hate my job. And it used to be 40 hours. And in fact, I get paid for 35 hours, but I work 80 hours because how often does that happen? All the time. People don't do 9 to 5 anymore. People do 6 to 9. It's a lot. So more and more people are becoming entrepreneurs because they're going, this is bullshit. I can, and on top of that, I can barely pay any of my bills or eat. I would not be able to say to people, you can overcome that. There is nothing that can hold you down except for you, really. Sure, there's racism. Yes, there's sexism. Yes, the politics are an issue. Yes, 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 and yes. And you could be like, and none of that shit is touching me. Because when it shows up, I'm going to be like, I see you. Fuck off. I got shit to do and you're in my way. And people are not used to truth. The politically correct thing to do is to pretend that things aren't happening. And when you're me and you're a child that comes from the areas I came from, it's better to just speak very clearly and be a really good girl and don't be the stereotype from the ghetto. All my friends were like, yo, what's up? And all of that kind of thing. And at the time it was like, ew, like that girl is that way. Well, guess what? I embraced her. I loved her because that girl lives inside of me. And when she needs to surface, she protects me like nobody else has. When someone treats me a certain way, I am loving, I am respectful. And when you take it too far, I'm like, all right, bitch. We're taking it all off. Let's do this. I'm like,
hold my earrings.
Yes. It's like, all right, Vaseline. Let's get down. It's like she serves me. She's protected me. She's loved me. And so I love her back. I'm all of those things. And so I go out into the world and I go, yes, so I'm a very educated person and I can talk to you about, how to live a healthy, wonderful life and eat better and you should work out and you should. And then I'll turn around and be like, bitch, get the fuck over yourself. Let's just call it what it is. You're feeling sorry for yourself and that's cute for 2 minutes. Time to let it go. It's like, I can do that because I've been there. And I'm not an authority on anything. But what I am is that I am not afraid to show you the ugliest parts of where I've been and who I've been and who I could still be if I'm feeling the fashion in the moment.
But I also think that there's power there because once you disarm and you own who you are in many different facets, the world no longer has power with that. Yes. They can't throw it in your face and go, well, you came from, yeah, so
right.
I already talked about that. It's, Gary Vee says it a lot. It's like, own your truth of who you are because you then disarm all those who want to cast a stone.
That's right.
And it's, I've known you now for many years and I've broke down in tears crying when you pull that person out. Because I'm so not ready for it sometimes.
Right.
And I know that it's funny because we can laugh about it now and I'm like, but when you're mad, you're mad.
Yeah.
And I remember when we first met and you were mad at me and I was like, and
for a while,
it was really fun.
It's like, you just, I don't know, I think about this. Do you remember the Vanessa Williams scandal? She was Miss America, right? Mm-hmm. Do you remember that at the same time, they were trying to create a Madonna scandal because she also had pictures where, right?
Yep, and they were published as well.
And do you remember how the two almost twin-like situations ended up completely different?
Yes.
And here's the bottom line about that. This is when I talk about how you feel and how you move in the world. And Vanessa Williams felt a lot of shame about her pictures. Mm-hmm. And she felt like she had done so much wrong that she turned around and said, I'm so sorry for disappointing you all. And sure, I'll give back my crown. And oh my God, I'm a girl that goes to church. This isn't what it looks like. And so people ate her alive. You just said, when you tell people, when you show people, they can't use anything on you. When they're like, I saw you do, you like, and what? Your point is, right? Madonna walked out onto Live Aid. And people were like, take it off right in the middle of the crazy. And she said, ain't shit coming off. And as soon as she got off the stage and somebody interviewed her and they were like, so the pictures. And her answer was, I was hungry and they gave me $10, which meant I could go to McDonald's and get me some fries and something to drink. So fuck off. They couldn't spook her with her horrible story, even though she too talked about being so religious, Catholic, and all this kind of stuff. Both very similar, and yet Vanessa Williams was practically laid out from the sadness and the pain for almost 15 years. She made a return. She did great. I think she's amazing and wonderful, but she went through it. She talks about the therapy and the pain she had to overcome, and Madonna's like, whatever. And it was, now we can all go into different, we could say, well, but this situation was different from this because of this and this and whatever. The point is, what you believe, you create. And we're living in a world where
shame,
where people will shame you and crush you because everyone walks around feeling so bad about themselves that if they can make you feel worse, it almost gives them, they think people a lot, and you know, not everyone, I don't want to generalize, but there is an idea that if I feel really bad about myself and I don't know the truth, which is that we are all one and we're all here to take care of one another and love one another as best we can. We're not always going to get it right. And in fact, the administration that we're under right now proves that we sometimes get it really wrong. That's my opinion. You don't have to agree. But if you yourself face your own demons and you look at yourself and you say, well, you know, I'm flawed and I'm here to figure out ways to maybe work on the things that I'm not so crazy about myself. No one can hurt you. You hurt you. And it's the things that hurt you that you have to sort of look at and go, why does that even matter? When I walk down the street, if this person cuts me off, if this person is nasty to me, why should I give a shit? That person, you don't know what's going on in their life. It's not always easy to remember that. It's not always easy to go, maybe some stuff is going wrong for them. You can't help but be reactive in this world where so many people seem to be so angry right now. So I want to be a tiny bit of that light that's saying, hey, you got the same light inside of you because I could be crazy too. So just follow me. We'll do crazy together for a little bit and then we'll come back and be like, okay, it's all good. I did a little crazy. I'm going to forgive myself. That's another thing. Learn to forgive yourself, Anthony. Right?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Of course you don't. I mean, we would talk forever.
I know exactly. Perfectionism is an evil thing.
Oh my God. Control. Having to control the situation. Anthony was super, we're doing this way.
Yeah.
And I had some of that. So we were like.
So when you guys met, you said that was right after this 10-year kind of slow letting go of the music, letting go of the ego, letting go of the attachment to this idea of that music career being the thing. And so then you're at the end of that and you meet this guy and you guys are both working at a gym in the city. Tell me what your mindset was at that point.
Oh my God.
This is what I remember.
Because the reason why I ask is because it's really easy to say, like, I used to be a pop star and I was at the top of the world, then I lost it all and now I've done this. But like, I always miss that part of the story when I hear these of like, what did you do? Right? Where'd you go? How did you make it work? Because like, the reality is we all have to actually figure out a way to make it work after that.
Totally.
So I love that you're where you are now, but sounds like you had to get a lot of work done in between that point, that bottom essentially, and where you are now.
I'll say this. I'll say my last official major label record was released in 97. It was on Columbia. It was called Summertime. And they greenlit me a second time. And I was going to open up for a huge star at the time, and that was going to catapult my career. And I still hadn't quite fully dealt with my stuff yet. So I attracted to myself very bad situations with the label and a smaller label and all this kind of stuff. then I found myself unable to make money. And I've always been very resourceful because my mom was hugely resourceful. So I figured out little things I could do. I did temp work for a while. That only worked but for so long. And so 98, 99, I was like, what am I doing? I hit the street hard to get acting work because I was a performer after all. And I did a few films and that was okay, but they weren't coming in often enough for me to eat. So I wound up at the gym working out to try to get some of the frustration, sadness, and anger out. And that's how I wound up working there. The craziest part of that was first making the decision that I would work there. I didn't have a problem with working. I had a problem with the fact that when I was sitting in the office or when I was on the gym floor and someone walked in that thought they recognized me, it would look like, I know you. And then I'd be like, never seen you before in my life. And I try to get on. And then they would tell someone. And it became, when I became, for example, I went from being the floor trainer to being trained by Anthony, becoming the fitness manager when Anthony left. And I would be in this office that became a fishbowl of people where there would just be heads and they would point. That is when you feel like the greatest failure because people don't think anything of saying, what happened? And I'm like, I'm fucking working because I need to eat. Like, why do I need to tell you that?
Right.
How could you even ask such a question? Clearly, I went from being on an MTV video to being in this office dealing with your stupid ass. So it couldn't possibly be that that was a choice I actively made. I needed to work. And every so often I would tell people the story. I was very angry at the time. So when I met Anthony, he met me at a time where I just thought the world really sucked. And I was working a job that
I come across the cheeriest person.
Oh my God.
Hawaiian.
Oh my, he was like, hello. And I was like, shut up. And he'd just be like, today we're going to X, Y, and Z. And I'd be like, no, we're not. You can go do that. Leave me alone. And I was very vocal about the things I didn't like. And he would sit with me and be like, you know what? You need an attitude adjustment. We need to work together. And then we figured out a way to do that. And we did it really well. And then when he left me in a great position because I was able to put all of my energy and all of everything that was wrong and focus it on this thing where I was actually helping trainers become successful. I was keeping this gym that he took from the bottom and brought it up to a place where it was successful, and I was keeping it there and then some. And suddenly my life became a 70 to 80 hour week. But I was good there because I was making a difference in people's lives. That's when I discovered, oh shit, that's what it is. It doesn't matter what job I do. Am I helping someone? And the minute I figured out that my performance and singing and acting wasn't about performing and singing and acting as much as it was about making people happy, the trainers became my family. Changing their lives, listening to their stories became like a real goal for me. And I was good for a couple of years, and then it was time to move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. What was I thinking and what was going on for me? I was totally fine until people would recognize me and want to really get deep into, oh my God, like you're in sneakers and sweats.
I remember the first time you actually acknowledged, and you were the person, because I didn't recognize you. Like, I was like, all right. And I remember you being very clear about no one is to know. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't something that, and I could tell that it wasn't something that was easy for you to talk about. And I remember sitting there that one time listening to you, and I was like, which of course now in today's world is I make fun of all the time because I just think it's funny.
Right. Right.
But it's interesting to see how much that was part of your journey, that healing process, to go and actually, I guess what the world would call survival mode.
Oh my God, yes.
What do I need to do to eat?
Yeah.
What do I need to do? And then you find joy in those points Because even when I left, like, I'm not going to lie, is I'm sitting here going, did I really?
Yeah.
Like, because it doesn't feel that way for what I remember.
Right.
But I'm blessed to be able to know that even at points when we're all, changing in what may feel like a very dark time, is we made a difference in Adam.
Oh my God.
We made a difference in Sam and in Ricky.
Sarah.
And Sarah. It's like there are moments that whatever it feels like to us at the time, fingers crossed that maybe we're creating ripples, and maybe that's what people need to understand about the journey.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely have like the utmost respect. I mean, obviously I'm biased because I am a trainer, but like when I go into an Equinox or any one of the gyms in the city and see the 35, 45, 55-year-old person in the blue shirt, it's like you're in a gym that's projecting this like kind of image of like hot, cool, sexy people. Right. And you're there and you're trying to help people and you're trying to make a difference and you're making minimum wage. And you are taking your ego and just like throwing it out the window and being of service to other people. Like, it's like I see those people being judged all the time. And like if someone were in their shoes pursuing their passion and eating their ego the way that they do, they would never ever judge that, because
That's
it's. I mean, I was transitioning from a career. I was definitely never recognized. I was like in corporate America. Like I was not a recognizable person, celebrity, and it was still really hard for me to transition, to pick up the towel after the person that dropped it off the floor, to like just the ego, there's just so much ego of like, I shouldn't have to do this. Like, that kind of thought process. And like, so I wanted to get to that too, because it's so poignant that you went from such a public place to a real position of service,
right?
And how much that changed your outlook.
Yeah.
And I should say too that she was, considering that she was relatively new in the field, she was so amazingly diligent at the time about finding out about a client that at the time fibromyalgia was very new. She knew nothing about it, and she would delve into it to find out more so that she could help someone. It was amazing to see someone who was coming from an entirely different area be so passionate about, let me help this person.
Yeah. I didn't even know that at the time. I didn't know that I was driven by a need to make a difference, and even in the smallest way, and to answer your question a little bit, or rather the statement you just made, because I came from nothing and created a good amount of something and then was back to nothing. I had experienced what most people would look at and say, oh, the good life, right? People would call it that. So I was kind of jaded too. So when I found myself at the gym, the first pay I got took a month and a half to get. And I worked really, really hard, and my paycheck was $200. And I remember opening it, and very much in my super power in my mind, walked into the manager's office and said, "What the hell is this?" And he's like, "It's your paycheck." I'm like, "It's $200. I can't buy pantyhose with that." I don't know what I thought I was getting, but I didn't realize it was minimum wage, and I didn't know that when you did sessions, you were going to still get paid so little money when you weren't quite certified as a master, blah, blah. So then my goal became, I have to be a master tomorrow. Right. And they'd be like, and how can I get that fitness manager job? And I remember someone saying, who would be fired later, the manager that was there before Anthony came in, he said, well, you have to be here at least 3 to 5 years before they even consider you. And I was like, really? That's because you don't know me. Then Anthony came in, and when Anthony left, I was the manager, and I had been there for a very small amount of time. And I remember thinking, you can't stop me once I make a decision, because I had this attitude of, I had a top 10 record. I had several top 40 records. I can do anything. And that saved me in a lot of cases. It hurt me a lot too, because I also had a sense of, you are not talking to me that way. And my superiors, if you can call them that, I hate that word, would just be like, who is she? Like, why does she talk like that? She's such a weirdo. And I just had this idea that I always, even as a kid, I'm somebody. And then once I accomplished something that most people can't even imagine, I really had a sense of I'm somebody. And that's what Anthony met. Anthony met the part of me that was like, you will not come here and tell me what to do. I will not. I remember saying to Anthony, I've been running this place, whether I was the manager or not. You don't just come in here and think you're going to be my boss. And he said, okay, then I won't be. Then we'll be partners. And I thought, oh, shit. I expected him to be like, that's insubordination and blah, blah, blah. And I had the kind of pride that'd be like, I quit. And on a few occasions, I'd be like, Anthony, I'm leaving. And he'd be like, no, you're not. Shut up. Sit down. What do you need me to do? And he was always so willing to just be like, talk to me. And then I'm like, this is a good person. This is someone, he cares about me. Even though I'm so fucking difficult, because I could be. I knew that about myself. And everything in my life being difficult is what allowed me at that time, and not accepting the circumstances. This reality really sucks. I will not, when they were like, get unemployment, you could probably get on assistance. I did that as a kid. I can't do that again. Like, it was so weird. And it was, what if somebody sees me? What people thought looking in was so much more important than what was going on for me. So I'll tell you about places I went to and things I did when I first started working at the gym. I'd still go to parties, and I had really nice clothes and a wonderful wardrobe. And I would show up to these places being fabulous without money to be able to get home, and hope to find someone that I knew that could then take me home, or, have a friend of mine. I'd be like, could you give me a ride? Or I remember that. And I looked fabulous, and the lashes and the clothing. And then I'd have to go to my job in the morning, and I'd sit in that office and just be like, what happened to my life? I did that for a long time, which really delayed my ability to heal faster. Mm-hmm. But it's all served an incredible purpose, because I am married to what is truly my best friend, who could not be. We are so similar that it drives us insane. We could talk for hours every day after 15 years. And I just said to him in the car, I'm like, we are 98% the same person. Like, you're the male version of me. And then that 2% that drives me absolutely crazy is the thing that drives him crazy about me too. But we're so good. Like, we finish each other's sentences. And it's a weird thing. It's my friends say, who have been married for 3 years, and they're like, I fucking hate him. I hate this guy. I used to think he was so hot. And, he's fat. And, his breath stinks. And, And they're like, how do you do it every single day? And I go, I don't have those problems.
But I also think that you learned through your past relationships. Because I remember when I first met your husband, I was so impressed. Oh. Then I saw him on TV, and then I was like, oh, he's another one of those. Anyway, no, right. No. But I mean, in all reality, is I could see how happy he made you, and it was interesting because it softened you, and that was
Love.
That was one of the most amazing things.
Yeah.
So you've made this journey. You now have a husband. Mm-hmm. You had songs at the top of the pop charts, the top 10. You have come to a point where you have learned to accept the many different voices in your head. Mm-hmm. And yeah, which is her show. Yeah. Voices in her head.
Voices in my head, yeah.
And you are at a place today where you embrace the world and you accept the things that are there, and your journey to be a light for others. If there was a thought that you wanted to leave with our listeners about, our goal is to always impart the true nitty-gritty and the work that actually has to go in order to come out the other side, to realize that we all have that light. What would you want to impart to them?
I would want to say, there's a famous poem, I believe it's called Footprints, is that you are never alone. And as Source says in this poem, in this writing, when the person says, you know, I've been so loyal to you. I've had faith no matter what was going on, you know, and I walked alongside you believing in you. And then I could always see and feel that second set of footprints. And then
during the most challenging times of my life, there was only one set of footprints.
Go ahead.
And it is at that time that I carried you.
That's right. When you say, God, source, universe, how could you desert me at this time? The source's response will always be, I didn't desert you. There was one set of footprints because that's when I carried you. That is everything. You are never alone. Everything passes, and you need these moments, and just remember that there's always the opposite of that experience, which is phenomenal. Life has blessings, and you have to focus on, what are you looking at? Stop looking at the things that hurt you. Look at a beautiful baby that's laughing, because how could you be sad when a baby's giggling? Think of someone that loves you, that you love, because someone loves you somewhere. If you have an animal loves you. If you love flowers, if you love trees, go to the park, sit down and look at nature. Listen to people's conversations. Find things to do that interrupt the sadness with a beautiful memory and relive it. Close your eyes. Go there. Think of your dream. Because that's what's going to save you. And we're not here to suffer, contrary to popular belief. We're not. We're here to be our best selves. It's a journey.
Do you remember that we used to say this in the office? Suffering is optional. Mm-hmm. Sometimes hard to believe. Mm-hmm. But definitely one of those things that once you realize that it is optional, that we do have the strength and the light within ourselves to actually come out the other side.
That's right.
Corina, thank you so very much just for your time. It has been absolutely wonderful to see you and to chat with us. Thank you for stopping in at the Journey NYC podcast. I know that Jesse is completely enthralled. I'm going to turn him on to all your music. So we'll definitely download more.
Loved meeting you,
so much,
Jesse.
Corina.
Thank
you. It was great
you.
to meet you.
Such a sweet spirit. And Anthony, I love you. Bolita. My
Mwah.
bolita. Mwah.
All right, guys. Catch you next time.
Bye.